Cool. Thank you, Jeff. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We are recording this session for posterity, so you can go back and revisit it. So I am Dr. Amber Ward. I'm hosting this particular speaker series event, and we have several more coming up, which we'll tell you about in just a moment. I'm an associate professor here at Florida State University and associate chair in the program of art education in the Department of Art Education. And before we introduce our invited speakers, I would love for my colleagues to unmute and introduce themselves. Kristen, do you mind going first?
Not at all. Hi, I'm Kristen Garcia. Nice to see some friendly faces. I am an associate professor in art education at FSU and recently came from the University of Texas system, and I'm very excited to be a part of this talk and to hear our guest speakers and welcome everyone.
Thank you, Kristen. Jeff?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jeff Broom. I'm a professor in the Department of Art Education at Florida State University, where I also direct our PhD program. And like Kristen, it's cool to see so many familiar faces and names out there, running the whole gamut of doctoral students, student teachers, K-12 teachers, and hey, Lindsay, good to see a collaborator out there too. So thanks for joining us tonight.
Dr. Rachel Fendler is also with us, but I think she had to go off camera momentarily. She's an associate professor.
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Do you want to introduce yourself, Rachel?
Well, and give up the chance of having myself introduced. No, just hello to everyone. I'm also a faculty member in the department and really excited about this chat. And as Jeff was just saying, really excited to see all these friendly faces in the room.
And Rachel is also our department chair. We're so grateful for that. All right, so big picture, I'll start off telling you a little bit about FSU's art education and critical times, or ACT is the acronym that we've been using. And it's a shared repository of resources that are designed by the folks whom you just met, and students and alumni who are here with us, and friends of the department. And it prioritizes community, camaraderie, and collaboration. So the purpose of ACT is to help educators bring forward curriculum that holds central not just art's ability to promote the development of the individual, but also to enrich and enliven the world around us. So we hope that teachers, curriculum designers, and anyone else interested in the critical role that arts play in education settings might find this site useful. So I'm going to be looking off screen because I want to be sharing links with you all, at least during this initial part of the introduction. So let me move over to the chat and bear with me. Here we go. Okay, so there's that link. And here's a little bit of an overview of the ACT Speaker Series. So it began in 2021, and we are thrilled that it has grown since that time. It started with just the faculty and just students, and we've been growing to invite folks like Dr. Shyla Rao and Christy Garton, who we'll introduce in just a moment. So during this 2025 season, we will bring you 6 more artist educators, 2 tonight, and then we'll have a couple more in February and a couple more in April. And we know who they are, but you'll have to keep tabs on our social media so you can know what's coming up. So I'm also going to link out our Facebook in the chat. And just so you know, our chat is will be recorded. So anything you put in the chat will be recorded. If it's you know, passed between everyone, if it's just chat to chat, it will not be. All right, so I'll give you a quick overview. Dr. Rao and Christy are going to have an organic conversation around 3 themes that they came up with. And these 3 themes are mindsets, assets, and strategies, all around this conversation on school community engagement, which is the speaker series event title for tonight. It's guided by a complimentary slideshow, which has been, which is on view now. It's also posted on that ACT site, that first link that you got. And rather than interrupting this really great conversation that they're going to have, we're going to invite you instead to put your questions in the chat as they come up for you. And what I'll do is I'll be paying attention to that chat as we go along. And then we'll pull some of those questions at the Q&A for the very, very end. The Q&A will be unrecorded, so that can be more of an organic conversation. And then probably what I'll do to give Dr. Rao and Christy a heads up is I'll give them the heart emoji at like 7:40, just to let them know that they'll be finding a natural pausing point. So if you see that heart emoji, that's what it's for. I think I'll begin advancing some slides. So this is the Art Education in Critical Times. And these are our 2 speakers that I'm so thrilled have decided to join us tonight. So Christy, would you mind unmuting and introducing yourself, please?
Hi, everyone. My name is Christy Garton, and I am the Senior Administrator for Visual and Performing Arts for Orange County Public Schools, where I advocate for equitable access to quality arts education to over 800 teachers. So in my 15 years of experience, I have driven numerous successful initiatives, including partnerships with museums, art advocacy projects that have been significant for funding and arts access for our county. In my time as a teacher, I was Teacher of the Year, and I was also awarded Excellence in Arts Education for our county. And then I was also awarded the Art Supervisor of the Year for the state of Florida. One thing that I'm really proud of is contributing to the arts community by being involved in several of the boards that we have here in Florida, one of which is the Winter Park Art Festival, which is one of the largest fine arts festivals in the United States. I present at the national level, the state level, and then on topics such as curriculum design and partnership development. And I'm currently the president-elect for the Florida Art Education Association.
It's always so nice to hear where other people have, put their attention and focus, and it's just inspiring. My name is Shyla Rao. I currently serve as the program manager for the Equity Centered Principal Pipeline Initiative at Morgan State University. And my job is helping redesign the principal preparation program and school leadership program to help produce equity-centered leaders for Baltimore City Public Schools specifically. Before this role, I've spent the last almost 30 years as an art educator, as an arts advocate, school leader, higher ed professor in faculty in teacher prep, leadership prep, and I've had a really particular interest in having a global perspective on how we create cultures and community. So I've working in academia, I spent many summers in different countries. So going back year after year in Singapore, I've gone to, Singapore, I'm in Mexico now, Kenya, Japan, Tokyo, Jamaica. And every time I go somewhere else and engage with schools, with universities, with teachers, I come back to a different perspective on U.S. education and ways in which we can help make meaning from these different perspectives. And so that informs my intentional focus on really celebrating all of the different factors that make each of us wonderful and different in the learning environment, and how we can help support an ecosystem in a school, in a larger community and help celebrate who people are. So that's who I am. So how this presentation will work is when Christy and I were talking through how we really want to inspire, engage, model the backstage thinking of community engagement, of meaning making with others. We started talking about experiences that we have had and partnerships we've engaged in or initiated. And we decided what we thought would be really helpful for today is we're going to begin with a real world scenario. So I will share an experience from working in a high school in East Harlem years ago. And it's going to be kind of the center point that guides us through the conversation. We'll refer back to it from the perspectives of today, how we might do things similarly or differently, or what considerations we could have had or did have or didn't have. And then we'll branch off of that in our conversation to other experiences so that what hopefully you will be experiencing is a dialogue of our backstage thinking and our considerations that's just grounded in one thing, but not sticking to it. Christy, is there anything you want to add to that before I give the scenario?
No, I think that one thing, just to kind of share a little bit, as we were, Dr. Shyla and I kind of come from different backgrounds, but as when we're approaching this idea of school and community partnerships and how to grow that and some of the challenges, what we really discovered in our conversations is that even though we are both coming from different entry points, we both ultimately had the same goal. And so I think that you're going to see that, whether it be from, me coming from a district perspective or working with my local community or hers coming from, from a teacher to a principal to kind of a larger scale kind of thought process where she is now. At the end of the day, we both have the common goal, and that's to grow and to advocate for arts education.
Nice. See, I loved all of our planning sessions. I walked away with new ideas and thought, oh my gosh, this is so great. All right, so the scenario we're going to ground ourselves in was a high school I worked at in East Harlem in New York City, and there was a little neighborhood museum, El Museo del Barrio, that was just a few blocks from the school, and I walked by it every day. I loved the work in it. It was just really powerful. Art as advocacy. It started in a really beautiful way in the 60s, which I won't go into. However, what was super cool was we would walk from the high school to the museum during class time. And we would just walk over, engage with some art, engage with the staff there, and come on back to the school. And we started to develop this ongoing relationship with the folks in the museum, with the art, and the students really began to feel like the space was theirs. Right? They were really comfortable. We had repeated rehearsals in this space. And it was just really cool because it started out with seeing each other, recognizing each other, and then really truly partnering. And around, I don't know, maybe a year or two later, the administration was really noticing a gap in our students between the credit completion and where they were toward graduation. And so we and the instructional team were trying to figure out what are some opportunities for helping students recover credits, which is like the most unsexy thing for a high schooler. Take this thing and you can recover a credit. And at the same time, the majority of the students at the school were undocumented, and they lived with family members who were working all kinds of crazy hours. They did not have flexibility or autonomy over their time. And we had very, very little family or caregiver involvement in the child's learning. And the school had, a lot of the staff members had some assumptions about the parent or family member's investment in the kids' learning. And so what we did was we partnered with the museum, we partnered with the kids, and we started to figure out what would work. And we ended up developing a Saturday program at the museum for the kids, the young people, and whoever they identified as their family members. And we were able to collectively apply for a grant that funded Metro cards and food and art supplies. And we would go spend the day, we would eat, look at art, make art, eat some more, joke around. It was beautiful. And we started to see a different kind of enthusiasm and a different kind of energy around the young people's learning. All right, so I think that's enough for now. I'll probably reference it throughout. But Christy, do you want to take us into mindsets?
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at the scenario, we as art educators are programmed to think that like our content area or what we do is maybe less important. But why is that? Funding, maybe being placed in the category as an elective. We hear, oh, it's not a practical career path, so you may not get as much support from parents because what are they going to do? Become an artist? When which is not a bad thing, but when they're done. So I think that we tend to think that we kind of maybe see ourselves less than. And so thinking about her scenario, think about what the mindset was there. The mindset was negative. It was, Shyla assumed that the parents maybe didn't care about their child's education because, they weren't able to show up for these on-site events. But that wasn't true. It was just, maybe they had to work during the day, or maybe the typical family relationship wasn't, when you're saying invite a parent, but, I don't have a parent, my older brother or sister watches me or something. So, there were barriers, and that those barriers were created by the negative mindset of approaching not only the idea of family and what that support looks like, but also there's another negative mindset with the kids aren't going to want to come because it's credit recovery, so thinking about that one thing. I always think about anytime I approach any sort of community partnership is I think about it from the perspective of, okay, what is my mindset? When I share my bio, one of the first things I always start with is that I'm an advocate. Because at the end of the day, you have to be your own best advocate. You have to believe in you and be your own biggest fan. Because if you don't do that, then no one else will. Your community, your school, your neighborhood, the local businesses, higher education, they have many of the solutions for your problems. In this case, it was a place that we like to go. We needed a space to have those students go on the weekends to do credit recovery. And then it grew into something bigger because you were able to move beyond that negative mindset and really embrace the opportunity to take on the challenge and to grow from that. So, when you think about mindsets in the community, your mindset when you're engaging with the community is crucial. It is crucial to fostering positive and collaborative relationships and partnerships. So, one thing that I always think about, and you're going to see these in your guided questions for you to think about later, is do you believe that your community values arts education? Start with that. Do you believe that? And then, what helps, what are you seeing in your community that, yes, they really value arts education, or what are they not seeing? What do you not see? Do you see value in arts education? And if you don't see value in what you do, how do you expect for others to do that as well? So one thing I always encourage people is to think about, how do you overcome that negative self-talk? How do you move beyond, they just won't listen to me, I'm just an art teacher. And one thing I learned a lot several years ago when I was in a classroom, there was a lot of talk about the idea of growth mindset, about approaching any scenario of thinking it in a positive way. A no isn't a no, it's a no for now. It's how you approach it. It's no, it's not a no, it's a, okay, this is an opportunity for us to talk and explore what is the yes. So, when you're looking at these community partnerships and relationships, you want to approach it from a growth mindset perspective. Mindsets, it's really important that you go into those conversations with that positive self-talk. You want to look at that idea of the growth mindset, because think about this, and I always think about too, like before I was in education, I had a background in sales. Do you want to buy something from someone's like, don't believe in me, that kind of thing, or do you connect with a person who's really positive and they're excited about what they're doing and what they have to offer you, and you want to be a part of that. You want to be a part of that excitement. And so I encourage you, as you're starting with building these school communities and relationships, is that you approach it with a positive mindset and you believe in you. Because if you don't believe in you and what you're doing and sharing that enthusiasm, then you can't necessarily expect for others to do the same. So be your own best advocate.
Um, yeah, Christy, I totally agree with you in the sense that, you need to have that positive attitude. You need to reach out to others. And it's interesting because with the mindsets, it's also, who am I in this space, right? And you'll see on this slide right here, there are some guiding questions that we developed that we often engage with when we're thinking through building our mindsets. And so, what is my motivation for engaging with community? If you're feeling like you're trying to sell it to the person you're wanting to partner with, then you might want to stop and pause and think to yourself, am I really wanting a partnership, or am I wanting a transaction, right? And what Christy and I are really trying to lean toward here is, how do you build a partnership that can grow and change over time, that can develop, that can then become something that you never even would have imagined it could have been. And it might start with an ask, right? But it deepens with the authenticity of the relationship that you develop. And I always think, if you live in the world with curiosity and wonderment, rather than drawing those assumptions that my colleagues were drawing about the families in that high school, right? If you're curious and you ask, it's amazing what you learn. And you learn that an art program in a museum on Saturday is actually ideal because of the work schedules during the week conflicting with school times, right? And as Christy pointed out, if you're only inviting, quote unquote, parents or guardians to the events, then you're really limiting what family might mean. And my background is, my family is South Indian, and we come from a very communal minded sense of family, right? So my dad, he's here visiting now for 2 months. He'll come and live with us for months at a time. We are, we live in multi-generational ways. There are many environments and cultures, all across the United States and around the world that have that kind of a mindset. So the minute you only say parent or guardian, then suddenly this whole wealth of community is just severed from the conversation. And it's also thinking about who could be a partner or who has wisdom. So if you are engaging with the community through curiosity and wonderment, and you're building authentic relationships, it may even be, the doorman of the building or the guy in the bodega on the corner, they come with a different kind of wisdom that people often dismiss. And there's a wealth of history, of experience, of relationships that can inform the work that you do with students, with community, and the meaning that you make. I saw you taking a breath, Christy. You wanna jump in here?
No, I was just what I was thinking about is, and we had a lot, you were talking about the idea of curiosity and wonderment, and looking at the opportunity and the resources that you have around you. And I was thinking about some of our conversations, we were talking about value.
Mm.
The idea of value, and um, you know, um, looking at some of the ways that you are engaging in your community, and being more open to, like, okay, what value does this person have, or what value does this relationship provide to them? And thinking, going back to what you're saying, is the idea of relationships are reciprocal,
Mhm.
and you both have to bring value. So that's what I was thinking about.
Yeah, it for real. And also thinking about, okay, if we're really wanting this relationship for the students, am I the best person for developing this relationship? Right. And I think that there's a humility with that. There's, this humbleness of realizing that I may have a spark of an idea, but who might I just enlist or partner with within my space around me who can help move this in a direction that's going to be more meaningful for the students. I mean, in the school systems, speak from the US perspective, the majority of the teachers in the classroom come from different backgrounds than the kids who are sitting in the seats, right? And there's a gap. And there are many ways as empathetic, loving, community-minded educators, we can create a space for safe sharing, for bravery, for expression. And there just inevitably is going to be a place where there's a gap and a possible barrier. And so if we really reflect on who we are in the spaces where we are, where we are engaging, working, living, and we think about who might be better or more effective or have insights that I'm not even thinking about, it helps us build a mindset that brings us more effectively with community and building true long-term relationships rather than that short-term transactional project for a classroom.
That made me think about something too. You were saying, I think there's a little bit of a misconception. I think, we are kind of taught as educators in general that we should be, the bearer of all knowledge, right? But I think once again, having some humility and saying, okay, maybe I'm not the best person or the expert in the field. I think there's also too a little bit of a misconception, you know, I'm a district level school board employee, and I oversee the curriculum for the arts, right? I don't know everything. I'm not an expert in every single thing. And so having um once again the humility of being able to say, okay, who are those people in my community who really are truly the experts? And having a mindset once again that is, I don't know everything. And then being open to learning from others, I think, is also really important.
So that I think is a beautiful segue to assets, the second topic that we are wanting to engage with. Do you want to begin, Christy, with some thoughts?
Yeah. So what are these ideas of assets and how do they inform our work with school and community engagement? So the way I approach identifying assets that may be available is to me is by taking a step back and before I even think about the thing that I want to go, kind of going right into like, okay, you know, um, Shyla was saying the idea of it being transactional, right? Really taking a step back and looking at it from a perspective of, okay, what am I truly trying to accomplish? What is truly the goal? Where does this goal come from? You're thinking about the scenario. The scenario was the overarching goal was we needed to provide some sort of engaging opportunity for students and these students in the community have a place for this credit recovery and we needed a place and we needed their parents to, or their guardians to bring them there, right? That was the overarching goal, right? So, really taking a step back. One thing, for example, over a couple things that I've looked at, some big goals that I've been working on at the district level over the past few years is, I'm seeing that, a lot of our new educators aren't quite prepared for arts education, for the regular everyday classroom. And the classrooms are challenging now. So, instead of putting a band-aid on, here's a workshop about this and a workshop about that, I've been thinking about, okay, let's take a step back. What am I truly trying to accomplish? And who are those assets? What are those assets that I have around me that can help me accomplish my goal? In this case, my goal was some more time for some in-depth professional development for our first year teachers to try to help them bridge the gap between from a studio classroom per se to now I'm teaching an elementary classroom, and so and looking at who are those assets that I have around me. Now, in this case, a couple other big goals that I've been working towards over the past couple years was, um, you know, um, a lot of our new teachers aren't necessarily prepared to work with students who are ESE students or students who are, ESOL students. And what are some modifications that I can provide for my students? Well, once again, I don't know everything. And so, who are those assets? Who are those experts in that field? In that case was an organization called Arts for All, which are actually a government funded Florida based group that works, and they focus on arts education for students with unique abilities in the arts. So looking and identifying some of those assets. Some other assets you can think about, looking at the scenario again. What physical assets, what spaces do you have available to you? What curriculum resources do you have? What technology, transportation? Looking at the idea of people assets, the experts in the field, people with those unique experiences in your community that could share maybe, something with your students, people in positions that can help you accomplish your goal. Who are those people? And then financial assets. There's lots of, we're kind of always pushed back against, oh, I don't have funding, but there are lots of grants. There's allocated funding that are in schools. You have partners with means to fund projects. You have assets in your community already in place that you may not be aware of. Do you want to talk about this one? This was one that you talked about, some of those assets you have in place that you may not even know.
Yeah, there's some theories out there you've probably heard of about funds of knowledge, about utilizing cultural assets. And it's really about flipping the script about ways in which schools consider the lived experiences of the people in the schools, right? So for example, a child who is I'll give an example. I had an 8th grader at a school where I was serving as principal before, during, and after the pandemic. So it enlightened a lot of things about this particular family. But he was an older brother, 7th grade at the time, and he had a younger brother in kindergarten. And he was the older brother was someone who exhibited a whole variety of behaviors and ways of being in the school environment, and that confounded some and confused others, but this child, when you would see him with his brother, he just nurtured and loved and cared and modeled all kinds of behaviors that he wasn't necessarily showing in the classroom at the time. And by really starting to understand his role within his family and the ways in which he helped his brother, they traveled very far across the city in Baltimore to get to the school. And to see this, it was something we were able to understand, that he held a lot of responsibilities. He had a lived experience as caregiver in a way that the other 7th graders in the classroom didn't have. And he brought this wealth of experience of little people. And he actually ended up leading a charge in the school with his peers, going and working with and reading to and partnering with. It was a K-8 school, the kindergartners, the 1st graders, the 2nd graders, and it was really beautiful, right? But it's really about looking past the what that you're seeing and trying to understand some why, and that can help inform ways of engaging the young people through the knowledge and the skills and just the wisdom that they bring, as well as in the community. Let's see, I'm looking at time. I'm very much aware of time. One thing I wanted to say is, when Christy and I were talking about this example in the high school, she said, oh my gosh, I could think of, if I knew of a teacher or a school in my district doing something like this, I would da-da-da-da-da, and I would go here and I would think of that and I would set this up. And I looked at her and I said, today I learned, right? From the time I did the program, which I felt was pretty successful and positive, right? Thus is the example here. I literally never, until my conversation with Christy, even considered reaching out to the district office to see what resources might have been available to help the program. I applied for grants, we created relationships, we partnered with the English teacher for the credit recovery part. We, all these different pieces, thinking about it. Oh, this is so cool. It's so multifaceted. We're using the community, the family. Never once even considered the Christy Garton in my school district, right? And so that's something that I wanted to make sure that is highlighted here, because so often when we are in our schools or we're in our classroom environments, whether it's public or private or alternative, we have someone like Christy who has a more global perspective, who can then provide resources and strategies that we might not think of from the lens of, the trees in the larger forest, which I think might be a nice segue, looking at the time, to getting us to some strategies.
Yeah, and I just want to, I want to point a few things out too. Not only in, thinking about assets and who are those people that are in your community that can really help you with creating some of these partnerships and accomplishing your goal. Yeah, you have those those education curators in museums. They will answer your email if you just send it, even if you send it to the Met. There's someone there. And that's what we do, just someone like me at the district level, even though, I am working with and I'm responsible for the work of 800 arts teachers, right? There is not a single time if someone doesn't that someone reaches out to me and ask for help or ask for support that I say no. Never, never once. The answer is always, how can I help you? How can I help you get to the solution? Because once again, we talked about we have that shared goal. At the end of the day, it's about advancing arts education. Even at at my level, it being at the school board, it's still my passion, it's my love, it's my life, and it's what I believe in. So, I'm always there as those people in your community to make sure that you are too. So, thinking about the idea of strategies. Okay, first of all, we've thought about the idea of having that positive, that growth mindset. We've identified some potential partners and those assets that may be available, whether it be like the brother who's so fantastic and you see a little spark of something different, or that partner in the community that's willing to let you use their space to host an event. So those are all great things. But the scenario would not have been successful without a few strategies. And it's those strategies that are important when you're building and nurturing relationships. Partnerships are relationships. And when you're thinking about these partnerships, these successful relationships, think about those successful relationships that you have in your life. What do they have in common, right? Okay, the person, you feel valued and they feel valued. You feel heard, you feel acknowledged, you feel appreciated, and your interactions with each others are positive. And so, approaching these types of school and community partnerships and establishing some of these relationships, you want to think about approaching it like, how do you want to be approached and what do you value? Once again, you want to a really important strategy that I said before is be your own best advocate. You have to believe in what you're selling here. You have value. What you're doing has a lot of value. So believe that. And when you're talking to people in your community, you want to definitely make sure that you are sharing that message. Partners love to see what you're doing. So when when you're working with a partner, you want to make sure that you're sharing some of the great things that their partnership and the differences that are making in their school, whether it's through photos that you're taking, or just simply sharing an email about a fantastic story of a student who made a connection or had a wow aha moment, or a teacher had a wow aha moment. And then another thing too, you want to make sure that you're thinking about when you're thinking about strategies, is you want to make sure that you are thinking beyond what you consider what a typical partnership could look like. You want to value diversity. You want to think about who are those people in your community, and who are those experts in your community. And another thing too, and I don't know, Shyla, we talked to this, and this was actually yours, so I don't want to steal this one, but we talked about the idea, and you really said this so beautifully, was the idea of collaboration over competition and the idea of defining and shared responsibility. Do you want to talk about that part?
I'm trying to remember when I talked about that in our
See,
conversation, but
so much brilliance, so much brilliance, so much
but
brilliance.
uh, yeah, I think I started with a super cheesy thing that I always say is 1 + 1 = new, right? So when
Yeah.
you're working with somebody else, the outcome is something you couldn't even imagine, right? It's not just two, it's something completely different. Um, and um, and that I'm trying to think the collaboration over competition is really beautiful. I don't think those are my words, but I love it. I could totally build on that. But when you really think about the characteristics of dominant culture in the United States, one is a sense of competition and a sense of urgency, right? I'm going to just name 2 of the 13 main ones, but in that sense of competition, it's it's the capitalism base, right? For me to succeed, you can't. And what we're really wanting to drive home is that actually we all benefit when we all pitch in and work together and build something together, right? And we all have limitations, we all have blind spots, and the more people we can bring into the crafting of something, just the richer and more sustainable it can be. And I want to, before we completely run out of time, I just want to say the biggest strategy I would love to point out is to slow down. Seriously, slow down, because as educators, we always feel like we got to do it now, we got to go big, and then we got to move on to the next thing. And if we slow down and we build this over time, we can start small and then learn from what is happening, learn from the young people, learn from the community, learn with what's happening, and then that can feed into what the next step might be, right? And so if we really can slow it down, if we maybe can consider, let's say, I'm sure many of you in this call are arts educators or museum educators, right? And so where you are working, you have many different things that you're thinking of different groups or different classes or different grade levels. And is there a way that some of these could be a theme that could run through the different groups or the different classes that you work with, where then they can inspire each other as well? Is there a way that as this builds and grows over time, one idea from one space can be shared and informing an idea in another space? But I know as an educator, I know as a school leader, I would see teachers really trying to rush through something because they wanted to make a big impact and then put it up on display. And that was the goal, instead of slowing down and thinking about the journey. And then the learning ends up being so much richer and just so much more multifaceted.
A couple things too, we that we think we agree and we would like to share as as a strategy too is you want to ask for feedback. And you want to really listen and think about developing a shared vision. Because once again, a partnership is about 2 people. It's about a mutually reciprocal relationship, and developing a shared vision together really also helps strengthen those partnerships. And another thing too, we had talked about and Amber had brought this one up, was the idea of higher education. And a lot of our challenges or roadblocks for some of the things we do are is funding. And there are lots of nonprofit organizations. There are that you know work with grants every year, and higher education such as FSU has connections and opportunities for grants. Your partners that you're working with have, or community partners have grants. And I encourage you, you would be amazed how much money goes unspent every year where teachers, or, people in the community just don't complete the application. And so we encourage you to really take advantage of those opportunities that you have around you.
if I could build on that, and I know it's answering one of the questions or one of the statements in the chat, is as a school principal, there are things as a teacher I had no idea that the principals really had access to or the district people had access to, right? So as a principal in Baltimore City, we had these regular meetings with our representatives, and they would bring in local businesses and organizations that had money to fund programs in schools, and they had to spend it. And as Christy's saying, a lot of it went unspent. And so something I'd urge you to think about is finding partnership in the leadership in your school. Because I know as a principal, when a teacher if they came to me early on with an idea and we could kind of brainstorm and chew on it together, I then, you're a principal, you can find time to cover their classes so they can go and have a meeting at this local organization or such. Because I think one of the barriers we find as art educators, we're teaching so many students and we have so much content and we're busy. What are we supposed to do this at night? What about our children and our own families, right?
Not enough time.
Right, not enough time. And so there are ways, if you partner early on in the brainstorming phase, where there are leaders, there are people in the school who can help create chunks of time for you to get this work done, and ways to find funding that is maybe outside of the box that could be helpful, as well as through partnerships like the partnership with the museum. We didn't pay for the programming with the museum because we had this ongoing relationship. They offered it. And then, so they funded it. We got the grant to fund the food and the art supplies and the Metro cards. Okay, Amber, you wanna, good, we're on the question slide.
We are. I have no access to emojis. Like my palette is very limited tonight. So here's your heart emoji. I want to keep scrolling before Jeff stops sharing, and then we can open this up for a more organic conversation. But Christy and Dr. Rao agreed generously to share their email addresses with you at sort of in honor of building school community relationships, and both have invited you to reach out to them if your questions are not answered tonight or if something new comes up for you. And then if you want to reach out to any of my colleagues who introduced themselves earlier or myself, you can find us here. And then those links that I put up earlier are also here. So I'm going to stop sharing this. And Jeff, if you don't mind stopping the video, if that's okay.
So stop recording, you mean, right?
Yep.
Got it. Give me a second.
Amber, while he's doing that, I love so much that your email is award.
Award 2. There's award 1 out there somewhere.
I love it.
All right, so there's some really great questions in the chat that have started coming through. And I'm happy to sort of moderate those, as I told Shyla and Christy I would do. But if anyone at any time wants to unmute, we're all open to that as well. And I'll probably start with Minky's question, sort of starting at the bottom and moving up. And Minky is wondering, how do you sort of negotiate? Do you want to ask the question, Minky?
I'm the one who typed it, but
Audrey, why don't you go ahead and ask the question?
Oh, I was just wondering about when we have partnerships between different kinds of organizations, there's overlapping goals that are that heart of that program, but then there's always like other goals. And I was just wondering if you have had any experience with negotiating kind of like those goals that don't overlap for the school and the community partner.
That is a super good question, because that's probably more often the case than not, right? You have points that are similar and then you have points that aren't in any relationship. And I've always believed in being really explicit.